Well, it's my privilege to be speaking today with Roger Martin, who is one of the highest regarded consultants, business knowledge people, managerial talent people in the world. And so it's for all of those reasons a privilege. And we're speaking to him today from his home office in Fort Lauderdale. And we were just catching up on the fact that we were recently at the new Pier 66. It's been completely renovated in Fort Lauderdale and is now a perfect cherry on the sundae of a revival of the whole Fort Lauderdale area.
No, that's nice. The harbor is great, and just across the way is the brand new ferry or cruise terminal, which is lovely.
Oh, is that
Yes,
right?
yes, just kitty corner essentially across the bridge from Pier 66.
Living in Fort Lauderdale, where did you grow up, Roger?
In a tiny town in the middle of southern Ontario, and for people
Mm-hmm.
from not near, I say if you draw a line between Toronto and Detroit, I grew up almost exactly on the line, about a third of the way from Toronto to Detroit. So an hour and a quarter out of Toronto and 2.5 hours from Detroit.
Gotcha. I think the weather in Fort Lauderdale is a little bit better.
Yes, yes. I'm here. I'm here in part for that reason. I decided after living my entire life in southern Ontario, Boston, and Toronto that enough snow. I'd had enough.
Roger, I know your latest book, A New Way to Think, Your Guide to Superior Managerial Effectiveness, has been a big hit, and you've been asked to lecture on the subject of that book all over the world. But let's turn first to an area that's been an evolving point of view for me, for us here at the Flowers Companies at the Worth Media Group, where I would say a year ago I was really, really concerned about AI and the disruption that was going to come to the entry-level workforce, recent graduates at all. I still think it's tough there and there will be disruption, but people I listen to and look to for more advanced thinking than my own are having me convinced now that it's going to be more about productivity. And with productivity comes growth, comes gains, comes effectiveness, comes GDP growth. And there's still likely in my mind to be some disruption and some people who aren't properly educated for the new world we find ourselves in. So I wonder what your thought is. Will there be a mass disruption of entry-level jobs, or will the productivity that comes from adopting AI overwhelm us with a new set of jobs that we previously couldn't have imagined?
So I think it's going to be. It should be more of the latter. Let me put it that way. It should be more of the latter. I do think, and I've actually written a piece about this, that I think companies are taking a short-sighted view of entry-level jobs, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is sort of, and that is the usual thing. And I understand the mindset of it, but the usual thing is to say, well, the easier thing for us to do is not hire people we haven't yet hired than get rid of
Letting people
people
go. Yes.
people we have. But I think the biggest impact on AI, like overall, over the long term, is not going to be some massive diminution of entry level jobs. I think your supposition I would concur with, that there will be all sorts of other new kinds of entry level jobs. It won't be exactly the same kind of entry level jobs. But what
Mm-hmm.
is going to be wiped out is jobs that are about finding the mode. So to me, the best way of thinking about AI is it's a mode-seeking device. And just to explain it in simple terms, you've had AI for some time, Jim. It's
Mm-hmm.
sentence and word completion on Microsoft Word. Right. It's been
Sure.
around for 5 or 6 years, and all you do is tab and say, "Yep, that's the word," rather than typing it out. That's LLMAI in action, in a very simple way,
Mm-hmm.
but in action. What?
And,
What?
and and in a short period of time, you're annoyed if it doesn't pop
No,
up.
no, that's right. That's right. But what is its mechanism for deciding what word to pop up for you to confirm? The answer is it's what's most frequent. the mode. Like there would be a distribution, just like any old distribution of words that are the next word in the sentence you've written. But the most likely word, the modal word, is what they give you, and that's what an LLM does. You give it a
Mm-hmm.
prompt, and it goes out into its 5 billion words or whatever, however big your LLM is, and says essentially what is the most frequent. It doesn't say what's the best. It doesn't say what's the most unique. Even if you ask it what's the most unique, it'll find the mode of that, right? Um, but there, and so what I say is in the modern economy, any mode seeking activity is going to be done cheaper, faster, and more effectively by AI than a human. Because humans
Mm-hmm.
aren't particularly great kind of mode seekers. Like, we think through some and eventually get to, oh yeah, this is what people want, or we ask 20 of our friends and whatever. If 14 of them say the same thing, we say, we found the mode, right? We found the
Mm-hmm.
mode, but that's really slow and expensive. And so if you're sitting in a middle management job in a company and essentially are responsible for giving the mode, oh, this, somebody phones up, your subordinate phones up, and you say, yes, this is what we usually do here, right? And that's your job, is to inform about.
Don't be asking for a raise, you're
Yeah,
saying.
yes. um, AI is going to do all of that, 100% of that. But activities that are involved in trying to find the right tail of the distribution, like the good, the good stuff, the most unique, the best, right? There are there there are AI is never going to challenge that in my view, and the people who use AI to figure out modal answers so that they can free themselves up to innovate and think about tail answers, they're going to do just fine. And lots, we're going to need lots and lots of entry level people in those kind of tasks. So I think AI is more dangerous for somebody who has never sort of said, I'm going to be creative in my job. I am going to just just use my experience to say, here's the answer we've always gotten to this problem. They're gone, unfortunately, and that's going to be a big disruption.
And as you being a lifelong educator, what does that suggest in terms of how we have to think differently about our education system?
Well, I mean, it's the next evolution of it. Like it used to be that if you could tell me what 6 times 7 was, that was value added because you had to memorize that to figure that out. Now you've got a calculator app on your smartphone that's always on you, and you actually don't need to know what 6 times 7 is. It will tell you. Um, and and so I think time spent memorizing facts has become less and less important in education, and less time spent on it. It's going to be now the next iteration of that, and less education teaches essentially creativity, taking a set of circumstances or facts and coming up with the best and most interesting solution, the newest solution. Unless we make education more about that, then education is just going to do a crummy job of trying to make humans not quite as bad relative to AI as they would otherwise be, and that's hardly a lofty goal.
I got a note recently from a young lady who had graduated last year from St. John's University in Queens, New
Yeah.
York, and she said, I'm still living at home with my folks, and I am now $180,000 in debt, and I'm a much better educated hostess in the same restaurant I've been working in New York City now for the last 4 years. She says, I can't find a job interview. What recommendations do you have for me?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's sad. I mean, I am somewhat surprised, I guess, at how many kids and their families who often help them are willing to go that couple $100,000 into debt without thinking a little more carefully about their education.
Hmm.
Um, and um, yeah, so I mean, and this is the case for MBAs. You know, my territory
Hmm.
was that. There used to not be many of them. After the Second World War, we graduated a few thousand a year, right? Maybe 7,000. I forget exactly what the number was in 1946. Well, by 2000, it was 155,000. Right?
Wow.
The economy did not grow that much over that period of time, and it.
Did we get better at managing?
I wish I could say so, Jim. Um, so, kind of I mean, one thing that has happened is that we've got lots and lots of degrees where we didn't have before, and that's not giving you the advantage. It used to be more of an advantage. I have one and you don't. And now I think it's a lot more about what is the content of that education.
Hmm.
And, there's like, I mean, I'm sort of polarized in my own mind on this. There's half of me that says I think the best possible thing you can do is go to Williams or Amherst or Middlebury or Swarthmore and get a liberal arts degree and learn how to
Hmm.
think, right? So,
Yes.
which has sort of nothing to do with any particular job, right?
Hmm.
The other half of me says, I mean, if you just want to be sure that you have a job, uh,
Go to a trade
yeah,
school.
well, go to mm, sure, for sure. But
Hmm.
if you're a computer engineer studying cybersecurity, you automatically have a job, like
Yes,
automatically,
sure.
and that market isn't going to clear for maybe another 20 years. There are more
Hmm.
cybersecurity needs than there are people who know a damn thing about cybersecurity. Now, do I want to make
And then comes mythos.
yeah, yes, well, that, but so I'm sort of polarized on that. What
Hmm.
what what I say is often the case. This is what I teach in strategy. Don't be stuck in the middle,
Yeah.
right? There is one way of succeeding, and that is figuring out what the fields are where supply and demand of people with knowledge in that field is favorable, and go into that field, and don't take whatever Iberian studies and somehow hope that you're going to or really double down on learning how to think and developing your sort of ability to interpret complex situations and based on a broad integrative skill set of thinking. But don't do
It
something
seems,
in between. Don't do something in
yeah,
between.
I think that's such good advice to not get caught in the middle. And the theme we're on here is if AI is going to make expertise cheaper and much more accessible, what I'm probing with you is what becomes more valuable, and your ability to not just be a pattern recognition person, because that's going to be done cheaper and easier by technology. It's to find the places where you can genuinely add value that's not predictive in terms of what words should come next. It seems to me too that a lot more people will consider self-employment. I purposely don't say entrepreneurship because I think that's overused, but I think the ability to create a business is going to become a lot easier and a lot more attractive a path for people.
I agree, and I think it's one of the good things about the modern economy. And there are bad things about the modern economy, to be sure, but a good thing about the modern economy, I think, is that you don't need as giant an infrastructure as you needed before. right? As simple as don't have to go buy a mainframe computer and whatever, and I'll just get AWS or Google Cloud to provide kind of that service, and you don't have to create a website, get Shopify to create the entire e-commerce thing for you. So you are much more capable now than you were 10 or 20 years ago to get up and running. And the internet is not panacea for everything, but it has the promise of getting you distribution in a way that it took years and years of effort and a lot of bucks to get into that. So it's more bite-sized approach to it. So I think that's a great thing. Like, do I think big companies are great? Yeah, I do. I think the world is a better place because Procter and Gamble invests billions of dollars a year on creating the next better iteration of things we use every day, and that's, you have to be a big company to do that. But again, it's back to that. I see both. Like, I think it's great if we have big companies doing well, and great if we have a whole class of people who are saying, I'm going to be a free agent. These companies are not promising to hire me for life anymore. They're saying, hey, you're kind of disposable. Okay, here's the deal. I'm not going to actually work for you. I will contract with you, and it'll be on my terms, and as much as it is on your terms. And if you want me around for a long time, you'll have to keep on recontracting with me for that to be most interesting to me.
Make birthdays even happier with buttercream frosted cookies, dreamy cakes, and more. Wishes come true one bite at a time with tasty surprises from Cheryl's Cookies. Yeah, I think the mindset, what you're suggesting is the mindset needs to change, as does the vocabulary. Because for 100 years now, we've all talked about how do we get a job, how do we keep a job, how do we advance in our career, and that may be fracturing right before our eyes. And you'll have to peddle your own skill sets. And as you say that, it just rings so true with me, Roger, because here at Flowers, 1-800-Flowers, we had not a spoken, but an implied pact with our team that said, as long as you're doing your job and doing it well, there's very little chance that you'll be asked to leave. And that changed over the last couple of years when this disruptive technologies began to appear at our door. And that pact with our people changed to, we doubled down and reinvested in what we call Fresh University here, which is our training programs and systems. And we packed it tight with a lot of AI training, a lot of technology training. What we said was, we can't guarantee you that your job will be here for life, but we can guarantee you that we're going to do everything we can to train you, to upgrade your skills, so that if you are here, great, you've learned the new tools and you're a gainfully employed and productive person here. But if you got disrupted from here, that you've developed skills and capabilities that prepare you to either be a contractor or to work for somebody else or to create your own shop. And that's worked pretty well, I think, here. But it's the new handshake with our team members that just confronts the realities of where we are today. I think that the idea of, and I did notice, for example, and I can think of a couple of cases where two cases, one where fellows said, I've developed these skills now and I'll be happy to continue to provide them to you, but I want to have a portfolio of clients. I don't want to be an employee anymore. And that was fine and very good for both of us. And another case where a fellow did get disrupted and his group was shut down here, and he was comfortable with it because he felt very confident that he has these new super qualities and capabilities that he knew he was A, very employable, and B, he could hang out his own shingle and help other companies do what he'd done here. So I've seen both of those things in real time up close here. So I think the idea will probably start to fade that everyone who's graduating from school is thinking about where they go for a job.
No, I concur 100% with what you've said, and I've seen my own examples of those two things. So I'm with you, and I mean it sort of reminds me. Like when I was a dean for 15 years, lots of students would come to me and talk about how hard it was to find an ideal job, because they would say, "Well, I really want to do this, but they won't necessarily let me do that at what my job, and so I'm hunting and hunting to find a company that will let me do what I want to do." And I had to give this sort of, I don't like giving discouraging advice, but I had to give some somewhat discouraging advice. I said, "So here's the fundamental deal: when they agree to pay you a set salary for a job and essentially guarantee that salary to you every 2 weeks, it'll come in your paycheck, they get to decide what you do. You don't get to decide what you do. There is a way to get to decide what you do every day of the week, right? It's to create your own business. And then you have to find the revenues." So essentially, this company is saying to you, "We find enough revenues that we can fund paying you a regular salary because we've found the revenues. But actually, you've got to do stuff that contributes to us," yes, you guessed it, "getting those revenues." And so they didn't like my answers very much, but it was sort of like, you sort of have two fundamentally simple choices. It's work for somebody else for a salary or some kind of agreed upon compensation and do what they want you to do, or create your own company and do what you want to do. Now
And even
tricky.
then, you're not always doing exactly what you want to do. You do what you have to do.
Exactly. I was saying, but that's a little trickier because you've got these annoying people called customers who actually
and employees.
right. But on sort of the revenue side, to actually have that chance of it working, you've got these annoying people called customers who say, "I don't like that enough to pay that much for it," and so you can't spend your entire day self-actualizing. You actually have to produce something of value. So anyway, I mean, they were kiddies, and so I shouldn't. But lots of them just essentially had never thought about that. It was like, "You, Jim, get to pay me my salary, and I get to tell you what things I like doing and I don't like doing, and I'll do the things I really like to do, and all that other stuff. And I don't like the flowers you're selling. I want to sell different." It's like, it doesn't work that way. Now, if you earn in and turn out to be super valuable to Jim, and Jim promotes you to executive vice president for product development, voila, Jim will start to be really interested. And if you're saying, "No, we should go into this line or that line or whatever," but Jim's probably not going to be asking you that on day one of your employment.
I made that point to my grown kids now many times, saying, when you have a job and you've had a tough couple of weeks and you really haven't been on your game, you still get paid.
Yeah.
There's trade-offs, as you mentioned.
Yes. But can I just say my story, Jim? For 17 years, I was one of the guys who built a company called Monitor Company, in a big global strategy consulting firm.
You got to work with a fellow by the name of Michael Porter.
Yeah, great man. And then I went to be a dean of a business school, and then when I realized late in that I really loved doing what I did before, and lots of people wanted me to recreate Monitor, in part because Monitor sold itself to Deloitte. So they said, create an independent Monitor type company, not Monitor, but a Monitor type company, because they saw me as a great leader and blah, 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 blah. And I thought hard about it. And you know what I did? I said, I don't want to do that. And so I am the only practicing employee of RLMI, Roger Lloyd Martin, Inc. I have a general counsel. I have two EAs, one on the finance side, one on the client side. But I am the only consultant in RLMI, and I made that decision in part because I didn't want to spend my time feeding hungry mouths, which is what you did as a senior partner. I was responsible for
Sure.
20% of the firm's revenue, and if I didn't sell enough business, bad things would happen. At the business school, I didn't realize how much similar it was. I mean, I had to feed all those hungry mouths by making a program worthy of getting the tuition raised, doing fundraising, blah blah blah, all that stuff, negotiating with governments for what kind of deal we would get from them, because all the universities in Canada are state owned or state run. And I just said, nope, nope, not going to do that anymore. And I've loved it. I've been doing this for 10-ish years. And
But that's a terrific lesson on the heels of what you said before that, in terms of people thinking about their options in life. And by the way, without having had those years of experience in those other realms, you wouldn't be as gifted as you are now in terms of your knowledge and experience and advice. And you might not have gotten there if you said, I'm going to just start right here.
yes,
It's a journey.
it is a journey, absolutely. And
I
and I
remember.
like one of the pieces of advice I always get. So I like and I suspect you do too, given the demeanor of your approach. I love the American pragmatist philosophers, and John Dewey among them, who really emphasize the degree to which how you experience your experiences makes a huge difference. If you just do stuff and don't think a lot about how did that go compared to what I thought, etc., then you just won't get very good, right? But if instead you use
But
every
that is so.
single,
Let's come back to
yeah,
that. Experience your
yeah,
experiences. Go
yeah.
on.
But if you say every experience is something I have to experience in a certain way, which is to say, what can I take from that? Uh, that's maybe a little data point. I'll just put it away now until I get some more. I'm not going to maybe change everything on the basis of that. But he was an experientialist, and I sort of learned from reading him, because I sort of was inclined in that way already, but he helped crystallize it. Um,
Did any reading him? Did you change anything in terms of how you do things? Do you journal? Do you have a deliberate process you go through to make sure you're experiencing your experiences and learning and adjusting and correcting your field of vision?
yeah, I write, and so when I start to see some pattern forming in my brain, even if I don't really understand it yet, I said, I did this over here, and that's what happened, and then I did that over there, and I did that over there. There's a bit of a through line there. I better write it down. Uh,
Do you physically write it down? Are you a keyboard
Keyboard
guy?
guy, yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just sits there in a file for years and years until something else happens, and I say, whoa,
Let me go
whoa,
back to that.
whoa, that's what that thing back there meant.
So if you're on an airplane, those fingers are moving.
Yes, yes. I write a lot. I had it tallied up for something, but I've written about 1.6 million words
Wow.
in my life. I'm still
And
far
how
from
are
Peter
you?
Drucker. Peter Drucker wrote about 4 million words.
I thought before when you mentioned monitor, I was asked to join a board some years ago, and I was reluctant because I thought my dance card was too full. And the hook was, look, we're going to set up a new strategy committee, and it'll be two people on the committee, and the chairman will be Michael Porter.
Oh my goodness! Was this
I
part of
said,
thermoelectron? Because he had no.
no,
Okay.
it was Scott's Miracle Grow.
Okay. Okay. Uh,
And
and that
so
was
I said,
American.
you had me at hello.
Yeah. I think that was because American Securities, which he was on the board of a fund, an investment fund. I think they bought Scott's Miracle Grow, so that's probably why.
Now,
Interesting.
it was great fun getting to know him and hanging around with him, carrying his bag.
Yeah, a very,
But
very brilliant man, and a nice guy too.
very nice
Yeah.
man. Just
And the one thing that people don't know about Mike Porter, scratch golfer.
I didn't know that.
Scratch golfer.
No
He was
kidding.
he was an All American NC2A All American at Princeton as an undergrad. I think in his senior year.
Over the weekend, I read an article by a friend of mine, a post by a friend of mine who's also on the board of Flowers. His name is Shelley Palmer. And it just tickled me because someone like you who thinks differently and writes so well, I'll read something you write, or Michael writes, or Shelley, and it'll just change the way I think about things. And he did one of those drills this weekend where he said, does your company have a executive vice president of electricity? And the answer is obviously no. But he said that's how we'll think in years ahead from now. You won't have chief AI officers. Uh, Compute will be available. Everything will be in the cloud. Energy will be available. Everything will be. We wouldn't be. It'd be silly to call things, "Hey, you're using AI anymore." It's just the way we do things. And he talked about electricity took from its invention to its adoption in factories 40 years. But it changed the way everything about how factories work and how we manufacture and where we put the energy and capabilities. So as you look down the pipe at what we're all consumed now with artificial intelligence and how it's changing everything, and it's changing so fast we don't realize how our thinking 3 months ago is so different today. But we also have physical AI in a form of robotics quickly approaching, and then we have quantum behind it. I don't even know what else is out there on the horizon. Certainly, the last year we've been consumed by SpaceX and the talk of putting compute into space and using the sun as a primary source of energy. How do you roadmap the changes that are coming and how to best anticipate those waves of changes falling on our beaches?
Well, I honestly think we're probably delusional if we think we can to any accurate extent, right? Um,
But if anybody can,
Elon Musk probably, um, but I guess I think the smartest thing to do is think along the lines of problems, right? Um, it's harder to figure out answers than to identify problems, though a problem will defined as half solved. And so, kind of why would we imagine there's going to be all this compute power in space? We have a problem, right? Of way more compute power than we have traditional ways to produce it with the traditional grid. And then the minute you identify that, you say, well, okay, so we don't like burning fossil fuels to create our power. What's another source of power? Well, the sun. Oh yeah, we have solar power, but that's that's a bit tricky, and we have wind power and whatever. But solar power isn't so tricky if it's in space. Um, you know, Sun's stronger there than it is on
and,
on
and it can always be
and
on.
it's always on. So why do we do that? So I think if you look at what are the things that kind of bother humanity, like in America, what would cause you to believe that we would develop a transcontinental railway system? It's what all Europeans say when they come here.
Mm-hmm.
Holy smokes, is this a big country? Oh my God. It takes forever to get from one place to another. Well, it sure as hell did before there were railways and steamboats and the like. And so,
And interstate transportation,
right, the interstate
road grid.
highway system, you could anticipate a future on the basis of what is holding people back. And because when there's something that's holding people back, not giving them something they want, somebody's going to find out a better solution, right? Procter and Gamble figures out that people really don't like cleaning and washing diapers, and they don't actually work very well at all, cloth diapers. And so that's a big enough problem that it's worth investing in a solution that transforms how babies' bottoms are diapered in the modern world. It's not as though you knew the solution, like you could be prescient and say this is exactly how it's going to take place.
But you start with the problem.
You start with the problem, or automated washing machines, right? Women were spending kind of 3 hours a day on average in a family as of World War II, washing clothes, washing, folding, drying, blah, 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 all of that. 3 hours a day. You could anticipate that there was going to be some device that was going to make that happen faster. And Procter & Gamble, when they saw that happen, they said, and we're going to create a detergent that works better there in that thing than works in the sink. And we're going to make sure there's not a washing machine sold in America that doesn't have a box of Tide with it. And we are therefore 75 years, 76 years, 78 years later, are going to have the dominant detergent. Like I think you can think your way through things best from asking what problem would humanity most value being solved.
If they knew what the solutions were, they'd be acting on it.
Yeah.
Did Steve Jobs said no focus group was going to tell them that they needed an iPhone?
No, exactly. And I think the very smartest marketeers now have recognized that.
But in your old world, in the consulting world, there used to be at least a reliance on, well, I'm going to go do the research and I'll bring you back the answer.
Absolutely. And you're not talking about the Neanderthal period either. That was the 90s, yes. Maybe even the 2000s. It wasn't that long ago.
Here's what the data says.
And you're an idiot if you don't do what the data says. We would say that. Yes. I mean, and I was always a little bit kind of different on this front. I would sort of say, you know what? We went out and surveyed 100 customers, so that's 100 data points. And if we went to the sales, this would be like a B2B company that had a direct sales force. If we actually went to the salespeople, each one of them probably has 10,000 data points, and there are 100 of them. There's 1 million kind of data points, and we think our 100, because we collected them, are much more valuable than the 800 because they're not super smart strategists. I hate I just like hate that attitude, and so I was always a proponent in the good old days of going to the salespeople, but don't ask the salespeople to give you the solution, right? That's somebody else's expertise. Get your product development people to figure out and imagine. Now, sometimes they will, but they can tell you what bugs customers. Yes. They for sure can tell you. They can tell you what bugs customers about what we're doing, and what bugs customers because nobody is doing it. And if you mind the sales folks and ask them the right questions. Don't ask them the question, what would you like us to do? And the answer from every salesperson on the face of the planet is, oh, if we could just cut our prices by 10 or 15%, we'd get help. Don't ask them that question to get not a dumb answer, but a sort of a self-interested answer. But if you ask them about customers and their problems and actually go out and travel with them, rather than do some quantitative survey, you'll be much, 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 much better off.
Roger, such a pleasure to talk to you. You're just terrific, and as I say, you've just increased my reading assignment list for the week. Can I get it translated to audio so I can listen on the way to work?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I bet you can. I bet there's software
I'm certain
that you can do it. It's a good question. I hadn't thought of that. People, it's interesting. When Plane to Win came out, physical hard copies was 95% and
Yeah.
Audible was 5%. It's over
Today.
50% Audible now. So I think
Uh-huh.
people driving, working out,
Walking. Yep.
walking, they are consuming books audibly, not reading
Uh,
paper anymore.
as a focus group of one, that's
That's
me.
you, okay?
I'm listening. And I would tell you, even if we have a beach house, it's an hour and 20 minutes away, and I don't listen to music very much anymore because there's so much good content to listen
Yeah.
to. I feel like I could be learning something
Yes.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if it is taking a noticeable cut out of radio. That
Without
Yeah, you
question.
think so?
Without
Yeah,
question.
yeah. Because there's so many people who just say, "Oh, Roger, yeah, yeah, I was listening to your book," and it's like, whatever happened to reading? But I think I think people might like. There's all this theory about how people learn. I think people are auditory, people are visual, people are whatever, and I think there are a whole bunch of auditory people who just say, thank the Lord, we now have a way for me to learn in the way that's easiest for me rather than the way that's hardest for me.
And I know what I'll be listening to. Thank you. Thank you, Roger Mon. It was just a pleasure to be with you.
Not at all. Thank you for having me.